Kilgore. Kilgore Trout. Pronouns are he, him. Age of consent laws are arbitrary, different in states and countries. Curious about the host's thoughts on the topic. Hello, Kilgore. How you doing?
Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good here. What about you?
I am well. Still able to sit upright and take nourishment, so I'm happy.
That's all that matters.
Cross-examiners work. I don't know cross-examiners work. I will check you out, sir. And I love the floating circle.
Thanks. I take on meat form every now and then just to do something like this.
Well, I have no axe to grind here. I'm not making a case. I'm just curious how age of consent laws can vary so widely from state to state and country to country.
Right.
I don't understand how we come to those. Admittedly, children need protection, from
right.
sexual predators, but it seems kind of arbitrary to me.
I don't know. I feel like I think we need as much protection as possible, but I just, maybe that's just because I'm a parent and I think we need like stricter rules on this, but that's just, it's all personal opinion. I don't know. What about you, C? Where do you stand?
It's a fascinating question because when you sort of process that and you think about what's the process to establish that and then to change it from a legal perspective, you run into politics and you run into religion. So you get laws that have been established for a long time, and any attempt to raise the age of consent was probably not, you're probably not from a political standpoint risking too much to say, hey, it's been 15 for so long in Alabama, let's make it 16 or 17 or 18, whatever they want. You're probably not going to get too much pushback these days. But in the old days, the reason that the age was so much younger is we came from a much more rural society where people were regularly marrying off their daughters at a young age because kids were not staying in school. They were becoming adults and going and working on the farm to support the family earlier. And it was a little, I'm talking turn of the 1900s and before the Industrial Revolution. My guess, and I have not studied this, is that's where it came from. We have the biblical dilemma of the Bible and the Quran talk about very young ages of consent, if they worry about consent at all. And then you take that into a country that's been farmers for 150 years, and they are maintaining that sort of pattern. And slowly over time, those ages start creeping up as we learn things as a society, as we research mental health, as we research the development of adolescent brains and when consent can actually be truly meaningful. And so it's an interesting study, both politically, legally, and scientifically, as to why they are different in different parts of the country. I can't tell you. I'm guessing if we look at the pattern, this is just a guess and it's based mostly on stereotypes. You're going to see a trend where in the southern or more rural states, you're going to see on average a lower age of consent. Because when you think about it, even bringing it up might get you into like, why are you even bringing this up? So of all the issues I could bring up as a state legislature, hey, I think we should raise the age of consent by a year or two is not going to win you any battles, and it might lose you some battles from some rural folks or something like that. That would be my guess. What are your thoughts there, John?
Yeah, I'm going to go into some personal stuff now, but when I was a kid, old enough kid, I was 16. 16 in the UK is the age of consent, or at least was when I was 16. And being a child, I was stupid and did some stupid things and got a lady pregnant who was also 16. And I just feel like there needs to be more education on this kind of thing. And people like me then wouldn't have made big mistakes like that. Thank goodness I lived in a country where, healthcare and bodily autonomy and, all this stuff isn't frowned upon. But I definitely think there needs to be way more education on this subject and some kind of agreement worldwide, not even statewide or pockets of states where people just agree on this thing. You're kind of right. It is almost arbitrary. We kind of just need to go, this is what people need. this is where when you become a certain age, you know what you want and know what's good for you and good for your family and all this. I think we just need a better education on this entire subject. I'm not a big fan of saying, well, here it's 14, so let's go and have some sex. That's not at that age. No. I was a young idiot and did some things that I shouldn't have done because I didn't know about it. I didn't know the repercussions of it. And so that's probably the journey we need to be going down, is, educating a bit better on these subjects.
I agree. And I think that, and I'd love to hear Kilgore's take on this, but I to follow up on that, I think that if you study, I know that there have been studies where you look at abstinence-only education, the lack of sex education, trending that happens a lot more in the South, and you combine that with a lower rate of lower age of consent, combine that with religiosity, and all of that mixed into one big bubble, you end up with a condition where the most religious states in the country have the highest rates of teen pregnancy. They have the highest rates of STD. They have the highest rate of drug addiction. They have the highest divorce rate. They have almost all the social meters. They are ranked higher. Now, I'm not going to say that, correlation is causation, right? But it happens in every country we see as well. County, country, state, there's a pattern here. Now, one could say it's that way because everything is so bad, people are more religious, but the religion happened first, right? They were more religious first. So there's a temporal element there too. So maybe Kilgore, does any of this sort of speak to you to explain anything?
I think you nailed it. I think the magic word is education. And of course, no Christian nationalists are going to go along with sex education. That's out of the question. We can't let them know what's happening with their own bodies. But I was going to mention that in let's see, I got it right here. Paraguay, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, and Ecuador, the age of consent is 14.
Oh, that just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, look at who was it? Moore, was it? He was a politician in the South. I forget the name. It came out during a bid for him to become Judge Roy Moore. Yes. Thank you, Roy Moore. It came out that he had supposedly an underage relationship, and just like we see with certain presidents in the United States recently, he didn't lose support for that, right? There is this sort of I'm not going to nail it just on Christianity, but there is this sort of Abrahamic religion attitude that is sort of seeped into the ether of, the boys will be boys thing, and it's her fault thing, and the age of consent thing. It's all mixed in with this women are property thing. And I think that is still a pervasive layer that you have to fight through as you try to drag people kicking and screaming into reality. And by that, I mean, we as a society have gotten better at measuring and understanding. And nowadays we are trying to make our laws based on psychiatry and science and facts. Whereas before it was things like, hey, I need to get rid of my daughter so I don't have to pay all this money and she needs to go work on the farm and make babies. That's why, it still is that way. We need to push in the other direction. And it is through education, as you were saying, John and Kilgore, that you can create generations of people who understand that we're not just randomly, the psychiatrists are not randomly talking about what it can constitute consent or a mature brain. We have science behind this. And the more we can do public policy making based on science rather than old wives' tales, the better.
I get nervous knowing that I'm going to possibly be the one that has to explain all this to my children. And maybe there needs to be something where you get an expert who knows how to explain it to people of a certain age, and get them to go into these schools and say, this is what happens. This is what your body might do. It's okay, but this is, the precautions to take, and probably when you should be thinking about taking these kind of actions and speaking about consent and teaching all that kind of stuff. Because as well, yes, you said the age of consent, but I feel like consent isn't itself taught enough either. You see videos of young boy saying like, "Oh, this girl didn't want to be my girlfriend," and the parents will go, "Well, what are you going to do?" "Well, I'll just keep going until she's convinced." And like there's not enough education on that side of things as well. So this whole thing could just be boiled down with getting some proper decent experts in and teaching these kids and young adults what's what and how to do stuff.
Yeah, I was a resident assistant in college at an all freshman dorm. Right, I'm a upperclassman, and one of the presentations they had the first week was somebody from a health major came into each dorm. Mandatory attendance, and she pulled out condoms and she pulled out everything that you would expect in high school and went through it all again, and then said, "This is all free down at the health center." And I am sure that there are places where they don't do that because they are worried about what parents will say, even though these are adults at this point. You're over 18. They would still not do that. And I know from being an RA, from being an assistant and talking to these kids one-on-one where they were getting into problems, it saved people's futures because they had that talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish I'd had that.
Well,
I hope that helps you, Kilgore.
We don't have this much anymore. We don't have this much anymore, but I grew up on a farm, so I understood reproduction when I was 6.
Wow.
If you're around cows and chickens and horses, you get it. You get it right away.
Right.
You get it right away. Well, trying to keep teenagers from fucking is like trying to keep a blue heeler from barking. You better prepare them. And by the way, you guys nailed it. I think that's a great answer. I don't have any real opinion on that. I just find it confusing that there are so many different opinions on when the age of consent is.
Right.
It goes to...
It's 20. In some countries, it's 20.
Wow.
Yeah, but it goes to how people make decisions, both collectively in politics and individually, right? So individually, good enough for my father, good enough for me, or it's always been that way in the Bible, or there's a bunch of ways you can make decisions that aren't science-based policies, right? And it also comes up in politics as in political risk. If I'm going to sit here and advocate changing this age, all I do is open myself to attacks from some people, and the rest of the county may not even give a damn. And I could instead be sitting here talking about these evil books in the library, or how we need to fight off the rise of immigration or whatever. And that's going to keep me in office more than actually changing any laws. So there's layers, and they interact with each other, but attacking it at each layer is a good thing.
One last thing, I'm a dog lover, and fuck Kristi Noem for shooting her dog. God damn it. That makes me, I am still mad about that. I will always be mad about that. That dog could have been rehomed so easily. Yeah. So easily.
Right. I'm with you. I'm also a dog lover, and I have a dog myself. And I brought her with me from the UK. Just, Well,
she's got a multiple body count. Don't forget, it wasn't just a dog. It was a goat.
Right.
And reading that, it was I want to avoid politics on this show, but it felt very much like somebody's telling a story because they don't want to proceed in politics, right? Who writes this thinking this will speak to many people? I think she lost a lot, and this is I don't have any basis for this other than like what reasonable politician would do this? Perhaps she really didn't want to be progressing in politics.
Well, she said that in the book. She said maybe this was a poor political decision, or words to that effect. I'm like, you think?
And maybe that's intentional. Yeah.
There you go. And maybe I don't want to be even mentioning the P word on the show.
Right. Exactly.
Because it opens up too many doors. But we appreciate you calling in, Kilgore. That was great.
Again, one other last thing. As Dr. Johnny Fever said on WKRP, the entire Russian army can be freezing to death, but let one collie break a leg.
That's right.
There you go.
God, what a great show that was. Thank you, Kilgore.
Yeah, we appreciate you calling in. Thanks, Kilgore.